Greetings. This is Paul the Poke from PaulthePoke.com, and welcome to This Week in Prophecy. And again, we've got a relatively short week. I think we're going to cover about 3 or 4 days of events from where we picked off, where Checkmate and I picked off or stepped off from the Watchmen. Topics, we got some happenings in Jerusalem, in and around the Temple Mount, Passover. Tons of economic news. And I know that economic news has been dominating the blog here recently. And the reason we cover economic news is because of Revelation 6, verse 6, talk about hyperinflation as one of the leading aspects of the beginning of the tribulation. So it's not just going to show up overnight. We're going to trend that way. And there just continues to be news pouring from around the globe with all kinds of economic events that arguably things could be set into place that would lead to global hyperinflation. So we're going to talk about de-dollarization. The globe is getting rid of their dollars. Oil, of course, is going to be a factor. And again, that's Revelation 6. Do not harm the wine and oil. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, you're going to be hearing a lot more about that. Sounds like our little trial's over. It's ready to go. It's all set. It's going to help us. Finland joins NATO. Russia had a response, allegedly. Now, this isn't true. There's not a link for this, but it is suspected that there was a cyber attack on the country of Finland as they announced this. Coincidence, I guess. Earthquake, Papua New Guinea has joined the 7.0 Richter scale quake and above club, if you want to call it that. Another massive 7.0 or greater. Those are the only ones we're covering here at Paul the Poke. And then we're going to close with innocent until proven guilty. Former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi has now, I think this is her first time to be on PaulthePoke.com. So I'd like to welcome former Speaker Pelosi to the blog. So we're going to get started. Scripture reference, Exodus 12, verse 6, you shall keep it, that would be the lamb, until the 14th day of the same month. Then the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel is to slaughter it at twilight. So, again, the idea is they were to take a lamb on the 10th, inspect it for 4 days to make sure it was pure. It was clean, ceremonially clean, without defect, sinless, if you will, is the idea, ultimately pointing toward Christ as the sinless Passover, Paschal Lamb. All those terms are synonymous from a Hebrew perspective. So, with that, we're going to go to the Dung Gate. This is on the south side of the Temple Mount complex. Just follow the cursor here. The Dung Gate is located on the south side of what is known as the Temple Mount. Here is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. North of that's the Gold Dome. And to the west is the Western Wall. Well, just due south of the Western Wall is the Dung Gate, and that's where we're going to go to. Passover Sacrifice reenactment takes place adjacent to the Temple Mount. So we know this took place just a little bit south of the Temple Mount. So here's a little picture. We have our Levitical priests ready to go execute this. And these silver trumpets that you see being blown, they are the trumpets that are going to be used for temple worship service in the third temple. And again, I know many of you folks, we don't need the sacrifices. Jesus was our sacrifice. Yes, I understand that. Jesus himself also said that a third temple would be built. And when the bad guy, the Antichrist, claims to be God in the Holy of Holies, that would mean the temple is up. Get out of town. So Jesus himself even prophesies and quotes Daniel. There will be a third temple, and they're going to be sacrificing. It is part of history. Jesus himself said it. So just going to and again, links for all these things are left in the post and on YouTube. So if you want to click on these and read more detail, please feel free to check that out. Several hundred people attended the reenactment that was held near the Dung Gate in the old city of Jerusalem. Kohanim, that would be priests, Jewish men who have a clear ancestry of being descended from Aaron, the first high priest, wore the biblically mandated priestly garments. That's linen that you saw those fellas in, and utensils that had been specially prepared by the Temple Institute for use in the third temple, so the pending third temple. Rabbi Baruch Kahane acted in the place of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, for the purposes of the reenactment. So they made this as an official of a service as possible south of what would be the Temple Mount. Now, my understanding is, and I think it goes into this down below, they had petitioned Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to try to have the sacrifice up on the Temple Mount. Here it is. Last month, a group of rabbis petitioned the government to allow the Passover sacrifice to take place. There has been no response to their petition. Rabbi Shmuel Rabinowitz, the chief rabbi of the Western Wall and Holy Places, announced on Tuesday that it was forbidden to bring animals to the area with the intent of making a sacrifice. So, lots of controversy with this. They even bring the red heifer into play. They were talking about the red heifers the other day, the 5 that they brought from Texas. No news in that. I don't think they're quite old enough. Maybe a couple of them may be old enough this fall for the red heifer sacrifice. Don't know the answer to that. I'm sure they're going to let us know. But at any rate, that the Passover lamb sacrifice is a requirement that is to be eternal. You shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. Exodus 12, verse 24. So it's something that's supposed to be done every year. So here's one article got a link to. Now also, Rafael Morris of the Returning to the Mount movement was held by local authorities under suspicion for potentially sacrificing a Paschal Lamb on the Temple Mount. So this was in the Jerusalem Post. This is good. Jerusalem District of Israel Police have completed their preparations for Passover and the Easter holidays. Head of the Returning to the Mount movement, Rafael Morris, was detained on Monday on suspicion that he was going to try and sacrifice the Paschal sacrifice on the Temple Mount, which was to begin Wednesday evening. So that would have been yesterday. We're one day into Passover. Technically, we're into unleavened bread on the calendar, but it's an 8-day holiday. As it does every year, the Returning to the Mount movement announced last week it was offering rewards of tens of thousands of shekels for anyone who attempts or succeeds to sacrifice a Paschal Lamb on the Temple Mount. So you don't even have to sacrifice it. I mean, if you show some goodwill and make a good faith effort, so I would take that would mean you'd need to have a goat or a lamb, probably have the lamb and the implements, the knives and so forth to sacrifice said lamb. Then you might, if you make a good faith effort, they say they're willing to pay. What was it? I think they offered up to 20,000 shekels for somebody who would, make a good faith effort to get up there on the Temple Mount and sacrifice the lamb. Last year, so they upped their ante, 20,000 this year, up from 10,000. So here's the article verifying there's a 20,000 shekel bounty on a Paschal Lamb sacrifice. They put it out on Twitter. I mean, so they're serious about it. And where was the statement from last year? Last year they offered the people 10,000 shekels. So if you want to try to make a couple of quick, and that translates to roughly $5,600. So if you want to bag a quick $5,600 next year, and who knows, the bounty may go up. Maybe worth 30,000 shekels, worth maybe another 2,800. So that'd get you up around $8,400, unless our dollar goes to pot between now and then. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. If you want to try and attempt a Paschal Lamb sacrifice on the Temple Mount, you could have anywhere from $5,600 to $7,500. It might be worth it. So something to think about. So we'll transition away from the Temple Mount and Jerusalem, and the globe is looking to dump the U.S. dollar, and the purge has begun. We covered this last week. I had all kinds of happenings with the yuan, the Chinese yuan. Well, Malaysia has joined the exodus this week, and it's not like this stuff is coming out of, wacko news sources. I mean, this is the American Institute for Economic Research. Brazil and China reached an agreement to settle in trades, primarily the yuan. And then I want to say all the BRICS countries have joined the party. So that would be Brazil, Russia, I, India, C, China, S, South Africa, in addition to Saudi Arabia has done that. And we even have a European country who has agreed to drop the dollar and turn toward the Chinese and settle some of their energy trades in the Chinese yuan. Well, guess who that would be? That would be none other than France, of course. And I think Macron and some business CEOs from France hopped in a plane and made the road trip to meet President Xi in China this week. It's like, hey, we're serious about this. We are more than willing to do some things here in the yuan, drop the dollar. So there are countries dropping the dollar left and right, and that seems to be gaining speed around the globe. So and just from a pure volume of dollars standpoint, I mean, the yuan's not big enough to do that. But the thing would be is, what about the domino effect, if you will, or the knock-on effect? One does it, another one follows, and then, the snowball starts gaining speed. And watch what can happen to the value of the dollar. And that's the thing, too. The Fed's in a tight spot. Can't print more because we're not going to need that many if everybody's getting away from the dollar. Interesting times, as the Chinese would say. But again, if you want to read this article, kind of sums up the role of the dollar, potential effects of what happens, if the United States dollar eventually loses its status as the reserve currency in the world, what that would mean. And at the least, we're getting ready to head into a situation here on the planet where we've got two dominating currencies. It would appear the West is leaning toward the dollar, the euro to some extent, and then the East is going to go toward the yuan, and they're looking to develop their own currency. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. And this does talk about China is selling U.S. treasuries. They'd be willing to take a little hit on all that cheap money they got, lose a few bucks to get away from the dollar is the idea. So, and this is what somebody thinks will happen to the dollar as a result of all of this. So again, a link is provided. De-dollarization has begun. We're about almost 2 weeks into this, but this is something too. This is from one of our favorite websites here, oilprice.com. And the thing I want to talk about this This is by Julianne Geiger, and I don't know Julianne personally, but I doubt Julianne is writing this from the perspective of the end times as I'm looking at this, or how we look at this here at the blog. Tighter oil market becomes more vulnerable to price spikes. And this is because OPEC plus Russia decided to cut production by 1.6 million barrels per day. And immediately oil spiked 6 to 8% in pre-market trading. Here in the West, West Texas crude settled around $80 a barrel. It's been kind of drifting down since then. But the thing I want to point out, all the countries, the biblical countries in the end time scenario are involved in this article. I mean, you got Israel, Russia, Libya, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, China, and arguably India as a king of the East, the kings of the East that Revelation talks about. And, primarily the Ezekiel 38-39 scenario with Russia, Libya, Saudi Arabia standing by. Iran's part of that, arguably, and others, Iraq, that would be where most of the oil is located, what would be the old Assyrian Empire. So you're looking at Ezekiel 38-39, China, Revelation 9, Revelation 16, India, kings of the East, from Revelation as well. So again, we'll take a look at this real quick from oilprice.com. And they're looking to do this within the year. Now, one of the things that happens with the destabilization and regime change with Obama taking out Gaddafi, they had roughly 2 million barrels per day that were on the market. Well, they've not achieved that because that country's been in civil war and a mess ever since then. So there's more product that's been off the market. Israel's now becoming a player. The Saudis and the Iranians have now restored diplomatic ties. In fact, I want to say 2 of their foreign ministers got together today and had a little meeting to discuss more economic ties. Saudi Aramco, they're doing business now with the Chinese, and they're going to help build a refinery plant in China. So all of these countries are getting together. And I do talk a little bit about, the ramifications for Israel with the Saudis and the Iranians getting together. So, Israel would have been, well, they may still be pretty focused on doing something with in regards to Iran's nuclear intentions, but now they're gonna have to think a little bit. Well, because we got Iran and the Saudis talking, and we don't want to upset that apple cart because they're trying to broker a peace deal with the Saudis. So I mean, this whole thing's just getting more complicated and messy, if you will. Iraq and the Iraqi Kurdistan area. So the Iraqi Kurds are in the north, up by historically what is Mosul, ancient Nineveh in the Bible, up on the Tigris River. So you can see all these they're all a part of it. And then we got the Russians and Ukraine and how that's affected oil flow to the west. Russia's decided, you know what? We're going to start shipping things to the east. Now, the one thing you would think, little criticism here of Russian foreign policy, energy policy, Putin had everything going west to Europe. He didn't have very many pipelines going east to China and to India. Now, I'm sure that's going to be changing because of what's happened in the last year and what continues to happen in the last couple of weeks with, these relationships emerging between the Russians, the Indians, and the Chinese. So those folks, I mean, you got the 2 most populous countries on the planet. They're going to need more oil. Well, Russia, I'm sure, is going to start building pipelines and have an ability to distribute oil and gas to those 2 countries. So they stand to make a lot of money off of this deal. So, and that's where we're talking a little bit about China. But you can see all these things are in play when you look at the end time scenario. This article covers it. And, you know, we'll get back up here. Not only Russia and India, they decided to do away with the standard market for the price of oil out of Europe, the Brent C benchmark. Well, no, we're not going to do that anymore. And they are now looking to Dubai for Dubai to set the price of oil in the market. Recently negotiated deal to deliver Russian oil to India, Rosneft, a large Russian oil producer, and Indian Oil Corp, a top refiner, have agreed to use the Dubai oil price benchmark. So they are turning away from the Brent C standard in Europe and looking to the Middle East to determine energy transactions in the East. Leads us to the question, is Russia turning away from the Brent benchmark? Yes, I'll answer that question for you. I mean, they're making a clear move to turn away from the West and take oil to the East. And there's the tweet. And here's the deal with that too. With this shift, per the new agreement, we'll scroll down here, Rosneft, the Russian company, will almost double its oil sales to Indian Oil Corporation. Rosneft could sell up to 11 million barrels per month to the Indian Oil Company for their new fiscal year starting April 1st. So this should be happening now. The oil will be sold on the Dubai benchmark quotes and discounted to around $8 to $10 a barrel. So, I mean, the Russians have become better capitalists than we have here in America. I mean, they're getting market forces really well. Hey, let's give the Indians a little bit of a cut. Work with them at about into $8 to $10 a barrel. And so they're all kind of agreeing. Well, you can be flexible as to what kind of currency you're going to use. And so, which leads to the next question. I'll go back to the post. And again, Russia and India dumped the Brent crude market. Dubai setting the market. And at the same time, the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and others, are looking to develop their own currency for trade purposes, of course. And this is also on Watcher.guru. That was the next article up. What's going to happen if people turn away from the dollar? And again, it mentions all these different countries who are turning away from the dollar, including this with the French, supposed to be our friends, allegedly. They completed a liquid natural gas trade using the Chinese yuan. So the French, hey, we don't want to mess with the dollar either. Okay. And then this was written from the standpoint, the India Times explained why India and other BRICS nations want to create a new currency for trade payments. And so the highlights of this, and again, for those of you who want to read it, you can click on the link. South Africa sent senior officials to Russia to discuss the, quote, recalibration of the global order with President Vladimir Putin. So translation, let's get away from the dollar and forge our own way. The BRICS nations appear poised to go a step further with the formation of a new currency. China's yuan has replaced the US dollar as the most traded currency in Russia. So Russia is now trading with more yuan than they are dollars. And I'm going to speculate out loud here. We still have yet to have a 10-nation federation of countries come together, or that would be Daniel's 10 toes of iron and clay, and Revelation's 10-horned beast. We have yet to see that come together. And I've been wide open to what that's going to look like, who that's going to involve. So just keep in mind the Shanghai group of countries. There's 8 of them. And then, eventually we know this is going to head toward a universal global currency that the Antichrist will use and demand all people use it and have a mark in order to be a part of the economy of the beast empire. Have yet to see any of these things emerge, but just wondering out loud, are we watching? Would it be possible that, it's going to be the Shanghai Cooperation Bunch getting together? They're going to need at least two more. They got some others that are kind of observing members, if you will, but they still only have 8. Now, this new currency with the BRICS would be secured by gold and other commodities such as rare earth elements. Well, who has access to most of the rare earth elements? That would be China, and they got even more access to those when the United States pulled out of Afghanistan. Afghanistan, I think, is one of the leading producers of rare earth elements on the planet. So, something else we gave up in exchange for the safety of the Afghani government. Well, the Taliban's in charge now, and China stuck their nose in there in a hurry. So, anyway, these things are developing. We'll keep a real close eye on them. But they're looking to get a currency together. And then this came out. This is a tweet from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This would be President Kennedy's nephew, I think Bobby Kennedy's son. The Fed just announced, this is his tweet. This came out yesterday. He also announced he's going to be running for president as a Democrat. I think the idea is to split the Democratic Party and try to break up who's actually running the Democrat Party as he sees it. Also heard West Virginia Senator Manchin may also be considering a run on the Democrat side for president. But anyway, back to Kennedy Jr. Fed just announced it will introduce its Fed Now central bank digital currency in July. CBDCs grease the slippery slope to financial slavery and political tyranny. This is a Democrat talking. This seems pretty reasonable coming from this guy, doesn't it? While cash transactions are anonymous, a CBDC will allow the government to surveil all our private financial affairs. And he's absolutely accurate. We talked about this, I think, back in September or October, about 6 months ago. I mean, there will be an electronic fingerprint on everything that you transact if you go through this bunch here at the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government. The central bank will have the power to enforce dollar limits on our transactions, restricting where you can send money, where you can spend it, and when money expires. It's like, oh, you got 6 months to spend this money. If we're going to stimulate this, give you a stimulus, little stimmy, you got so long to spend it. And I'm sure there'll be social credit scores like the Chinese. And then if you don't do that, you'll be docked. And of course, they'll have access to your funds because you're part of what would effectively be the Federal Reserve Bank. I'm sure it won't be called a bank, but that's how that's going to work. A CBDC tied to digital ID and social credit score will allow the government to freeze your assets or limit your spending to approved vendors if you fail to comply with arbitrary dictates, i.e., like vaccine mandates. You don't get your shot, you don't have access to the economy. CBDCs in the federal government. What's that sound like? I mean, that sounds like the mark of some sort. Your participation in the economy will depend on this. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that reads like right out of Revelation, what this guy's pointing out. And this is a Democrat. So we can't accuse him of being a right-wing wacko Republican. The Fed will initially limit its CBDC to interbank transactions, but we should not be blind to the obvious danger that this is the first step in banning and seizing Bitcoin, as the Treasury did with gold. Don't forget that FDR did that back in 1933, confiscated all the gold of the citizens. The Fed will initially limit its CBDC. Oh, I'm sorry, I read that. Watch as governments, which never let a good crisis go to waste and use COVID-19 and the banking crisis to usher in a new wave of CBDCs as a safe haven. from the germ-laden paper currencies, or as protection against bank runs. Looking out for our best interest. So this is, and again, this is written by a Kennedy, a Democrat. He sees these things coming. Just saying. This is not right-wing conspiracy stuff here. And this guy's running for president as a Democrat. If you want the link to the article, this is CNBC. Got a link to this. FedNow, the Federal Reserve's digital payment system, will debut in July. Be very fast, almost instantaneously. So it's a great deal. That's the spin we're hearing. System will allow bill payments, money transfers, and other consumer activities to move more rapidly and at a lower cost. So it'll be more efficient and more cost effective than banks. There you go. Just turn everything over to the Federal Reserve. They'll be glad, you can have your little federal ID, maybe a chip or something. I don't know. It's resilient, adaptive, and accessible. This is according to Richmond Fed President Tom Barkin. He's the program's executive sponsor. So it'll allow bill payments, money transfers, paychecks, disbursements from the government, as well as a host of other consumer activities to move more rapidly and at a lower cost. Well, let's all sign up. Gosh. With the launch drawing near, we urge financial institutions and their industry partners to move full steam ahead with preparations to join the FedNow service. That's what it's going to be called. FedNow service. Right now. Who needs your slow old bank? You can come to FedNow right now. I'm sure they'll be doing commercials on TV, radio, internet, and so forth moving forward. So anyway, this is so good, by the way. Some Fed officials say the program even could supplant the need for a central bank digital currency, although this is effectively what it is, because you would have, you could be wired into the Fed. You could reach out to your local branch manager from FedNow service and say, hey, I need you loan me some money. I'm sure they'd be willing to look at your credit and work out an individualized plan for you. And if you're a good little consumer and do all the right things, I'm sure they'd give you a nice little break on interest rates because you're a good citizen and better than some of these other ones. So, I mean, this whole thing smells, but no, that is happening and is going to happen starting here in 3 months? 3 months. So, but that will transition to Finland has officially joined NATO this week. And so this is what gets put out. Yeah, Russia. This is the sight most feared by every Russian man, an angry Finnish soldier rushing towards you on. Got a little rap music. This I don't know if this is coming up, but if you play this, it says, "Baby, I'm a gangster too." I don't know who sings that. I'm not that hip. Sorry. Um, and from there, I think Russia moved some more arms north and to the west toward the Finnish border. And we'll transition from that to Luke 21, verse 11, part A, and there will be massive earthquakes. That's a quote from Jesus prior to his return. Papua New Guinea joined the 7.0 plus club this past week, and it's in the South Pacific. 7.2 earthquake struck it just after 4 in the morning. And I tried to find there. I don't know that I didn't see anything about any deaths, limited injuries. And the reason that is you look around, there were all kinds of little huts made out of bamboo and vegetation. I mean, it looked like what I remember Gilligan's Island looked like. So, I mean, there were some little huts that collapsed. But, I mean, I don't know that this is a very advanced economy, culture, etc. So, it doesn't appear to be very much damage done to there. And we will close. And at this time, we would like to welcome ex-speaker, former speaker, Nancy Pelosi to PaulthePoke.com. This is her first time to be on the broadcast. I'd like to welcome her. Also like to read a little scripture for her. Isaiah 5, verse 20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. And San Fran Nan issued a tweet. The grand jury has acted upon the facts and the law. No one is above the law. Read carefully, and everyone has the right to a trial to prove innocence. No, wrong answer. Innocent until proven guilty. It's the other way around. And this is the kind of nonsense that people like her put out there and, distort the reality of what's actually going on. Innocent until proven guilty. So hopefully the former president will peacefully respect the system which grants him that right. Well, you don't even get the right correctly. He is innocent until proven guilty. Just like you would be innocent until proven guilty when it comes to something like, say, insider trading. You would get the benefit of the doubt of being innocent until somebody could bring a case before you that proves you would be guilty of insider trading, or your husband would be guilty of insider trading. You both would be innocent before the law. It cuts both ways. It's a good deal. And you better hope you're not held to that standard, because you guys have, the Pelosi family, been incredible trading machines and investing machines with stock options and understanding how the enactment of certain laws would benefit certain companies, and before the law becomes public and official and ratified by both houses and signed off by the president, had an incredible run of good fortune investing in certain companies. I'm not saying you're guilty. I'm saying that you are innocent of that accusation, and you would have to be proven guilty, just like President Trump will have to be proven guilty. He's assumed to be innocent as well. So, and with that, I'm going to close. We got some activity going on this morning in Israel, facing some missiles coming in from the north. Been communicating with Checkmate. We're probably going to get something put up within the next 24 hours. Interesting observations in regards to the timing of these things is what it is. And we'll talk about that as well. So if you enjoy this, please feel free to share with others at PaulthePoke.com. If you are new to the broadcast and the website, please feel free to type your email address in here. Hit subscribe. You'll receive a notification every time we put something out. We've been putting things out anywhere from 2 to 4, and if things get crazy, up to 5 times a week. And again, the idea is we're looking at what does the end time scenario look like from a Bible standpoint, and what's going on in our culture. Do they line up? Do they rhyme? Do they match? And this thing's like a runaway freight train. So anyhow, appreciate you guys following along. Hope you have a good evening. Talk to you later. Bye.